Needleman-Wunsch is an optimal alignment algorithm. It's a dynamic programming approach. So that is used while we are doing the global alignment, where we are aligning two sequences over their full lengths. It was presented by Needleman-Wunsch in 1970. The basic idea is to build up the best alignment by using optimal alignments of smaller subsequences. That is the idea of dynamic programming. So actually this algorithm is the first implementation of dynamic programming approach to the biological sequence analysis or sequence comparison problems. 3 steps as we have seen earlier: initialization, matrix filling, and traceback. We create an initial matrix, so where we have one more column and one more row, that is for initialization, where M and N are the lengths of our two sequences. In initialization, the cell of first row and first column of the matrix is initially filled with 0. The first cell, where we have rows and columns, they intersect with one another, and then add a gap penalty for each shift to the right. So we are adding, while we move one column and we are not changing the row, in that case we are moving one element further in top strand, which is if we place it on the column, but on the rows we are substituting the gap. So in this way we can add those gap penalties. Same way, if our column is fixed and rows are changing, so in that case we will add the gap penalties on over the vertical line from topmost cell to the bottom cells of that column. So here we do initialization. We take the first cell and we put 0 in it. So we are actually putting 0 in our first cell. Here are our columns and rows, and I'm talking about this cell. So we put a 0 over here. We take in the B, what we do over here is, for example, we have this I which is running this way and we have J which is running this way. So minus J into D. So we put 0 initially and then we move on in this direction. So what we do over here is we keep on adding those gap penalties. Anything can be I or J, don't worry guys. So we add a gap. So for example, if our gap is -2, we move bottom, so we are moving J, while in I we are standing at same place. So here we will add that gap penalty, then -2, and then when we add that score onto this, so it will become -4 and so on. Same way we can move in left to right in the rows and we can add those gaps. So that's what is we are doing initialization. So we move through these cells row by row, calculating the score for each cell. So that is where we do matrix filling. So in this way we can compute 3 scores: a match score where 2 segments they match. Here we can also take the mismatch score, but in algorithm it's just we put this match score. So it can be, if a match, for example, we put, say we add 3 in it. If it's a mismatch, we do it like something like 1 or something, or minus something. So in that case, depending upon our scoring scheme, so first part covers both of them. We can take a vertical gap score where we move from top to bottom, and then a horizontal gap score while we introduce a gap. So in this way we can have 3 different scores. So you will do that, or you will learn it when we implement it actually. So the match score is the sum of diagonal cell score and the score for the match. So diagonal. So from the previous section we are moving from the cells in the diagonals, the last location. So for example, right now we are at I and J, so it will be I -1, J -1. So that cell which is present in the previous row and column in the shape of that diagonal. We can have a horizontal gap score, that is the sum of the cells to the left and the gap score, and vertical gap score is computed similar way. So here are different situations guys. This is our whole algorithm in which we are filling this matrix. So if we are filling those alignments for I is equal to 1 through M, maybe this I is running over your rows and j is running over the columns. You can flip around, doesn't matter. So m is your length of one string and n is the length of the other string or the sequence. Then this scoring function right here, fij, so that picks up the maximum score among these three possibilities. Number one, you are getting this from the diagonal, and here is your actual score which you are putting right over here. So if you are introducing a match over here or a mismatch over here, you will take that score and add it into diagonal score. In case of you are indecisive, you don't want to put a match or a mismatch, but we want to introduce our gap over here, so then you can move from either horizontal if your I is representing your rows, or vertical column if your this j is representing your columns. So in that case you will have to have this gap penalty. And then in the end, in the trace back, we will have some pointers, so that is keeping track of from where the score of the current cell is coming from. So it will keep track of it. So diagonal if it is coming from case 1, left if it is case 2, and up if it is case 3. So it will keep track of from where the score is coming. So that will help us in traceback. So the final step is traceback. That is, we start at the bottom from right corner and we follow where the maximum score comes from. And FMN is the optimal score from PTR, this pointer which is actually keeping track of your scores and moving backwards, and then it gives you the optimal alignment. The scoring scheme can be user defined. So sometimes we can have our own scoring scheme. We can give some score to the match and mismatch, and as well as we can fix for the residues. We can also drive our scores from while using some substitution matrices, so that depends. So in this section we have seen here is that Needleman and Wunsch algorithm performs global alignments using a dynamic programming approach.